right, Pete Francis, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. First time meeting you in real life. Well, technically, it's not real life. You're in Connecticut. I'm in Milwaukee. But congrats on all your musical missions moving forward. And it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. So just to get the preliminary of your rock history out of the way, you were a co-founder of the band Dispatch. What year was that? What year did you guys get on the rocket ship, so to speak? What year did you start
on the rocket ship? Well, it all started in 1995.
Okay, so the band starts in 95, and then are you slumming it through the toilet bowl circuit for a while, the college circuit, and then what happens?
We're doing the colleges, and once we start to get a little bit more of a following, we would go into the cities, and Boston was kind of a main hub. Club called the Middle East. We played there a lot. And then we'd get down to New York to Wetlands, which was kind of our home. So those would be the city gigs. And then we got into Philly, played TLA, eventually the Electric Factory. But really those college gigs, that's essentially where we built our following. And maybe even we did some high schools and some prep schools. I remember one gig we played a morning assembly for these drowsy middle schoolers that came in at 7:30, but by the end of this rock show, they were up and pumping their fists.
Nice.
So that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, 95. I mean, that's kind of a peak of the college touring circuit era. That's when NACA's in full force. It sounded like the shows were generally really good. Rock music was big. Because now it's like the college circuit is like a skeleton of its former self. You know, there's not it's not as much of a thing that's sought after. It's not as much of a way to build a following anymore. So that's so cool that you guys hit that in kind of its prime.
It was I have to say, a beautiful time, and printing up a few hundred CDs. I really did sort of like that era about a CD and giving people or buying whatever it was a CD, because it was, something physical and you could talk about it. So the world of streaming is really so different, but carrying our CDs and then people having the CD. But of course, we're right there at the beginning of file sharing with Napster. And it was kind of mind blowing, because we could we had never even been to California. We went to Pomona College for a Halloween show, and I swear to you that like 1,000 people showed up.
Whoa. Because
of that Napster thing.
Wow. And how many CDs were you selling on a night in like the early days when you're just playing to 100 people in a bar?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm sure it sort of sprinkled out, but then you'd play a gig and just have an amazing merch night. Or often if we played Exeter prep school, those kids would just eat up CDs. And if we had a t-shirt, so you could come away with the gig where maybe you sold 30 CDs, even, something like that. So that was a super exciting time.
And then, so was there ever dark moments of like just band morale being low, or like, fuck, can we really keep doing this? Or did you kind of just hit a stride where there was just enough encouragement and enough fandom early on to just kind of have you keep going?
Well, I think there were certainly moments where it was hard. I mean, if we played a gig in Vermont, the next day in New York, and then down to DC, those are long drives and sometimes driving through the night. So it could be pretty tough. We were in Chad's parents' Suburban for a while. Then we bought a Ford 150. And so, yeah, I think there were definitely times where like, what the hell are we doing? But I think the underlying force is that we had good songs, and we put the effort in. I think the three of us were aligned with our music. and feeling the inherent strength in it, and believing that we could keep going, keep
Brilliant.
fighting.
Yeah. And so you guys were tight friends from the get-go, or were you just bandmates that found each other on a flyer at a music store?
I put the band together in '95. It was sort of my idea to bring Brad and Chad together. They were sort of had different personalities, really. One, I think Chad was a little bit more, I don't know what the word is. Maybe he was like a Huck Finn character, kind of wild, and he had little dreadlocks popping up, and he wore blue overalls and no shoes, and his guitar had 4 strings on it. And Brad had his shit together a bit more. He was the oldest of the 3 of us, so I was a freshman and he was a junior. And Brad had a really amazing knack for harmony. You don't really meet that many singers who can nail harmony. And I think he was the glue between us, where Chad and I were providing a lot of the songs. Brad's understanding of harmony put the velcro in the voices. But yeah, I mean, we were friends, but we were different. We were very different, and we had our differences throughout. But again, I would come back to the music as being the glue that kept us together.
And were you pretty addicted to the travel lifestyle from the start, or was that an adjustment when you're like getting in a van, popping out in a new city every night, people want to come see you? I mean, that must have been a kind of a holy shit moment.
It was. I think that we were sort of immediately likable for a lot of people. And yeah, a lot of holy shit moments. And rock and roll is a drug in a way. It's addictive, and it's a beautiful thing. You get a serious high after a concert where people are losing their shit, So it's sort of seductive to be part of that cycle.
And how did that, when you would come off a tour, how did you take that mentally after things are kind of flipped upside down and you're a regular person?
Yeah, I mean, that was hard, I think. But, once I realized how much I loved playing guitar, being in a band, I think it all fell into place. I just love, I love being an artist, I'm a poet. And so on the road, we go to bookstores, we go to guitar stores, and often I'd just be looking for the next thing. And you're really in the cycle of making records and playing gigs, and then everything that comes along with that. So once I was about 19, getting into it, that's all I wanted to do.
And forgive me, you've probably been asked this a bunch, but Dispatch, the band, is not still active, are they?
Dispatch, I left the band a few years ago, and the 2 of them continued with the different formation of the band, and for kind of a bunch of reasons that we can talk about if you wish.
Sure.
But yeah, so yeah, I am now wholeheartedly in my solo career, the Pete Francis thing. And as you know, I just released this record, Pattern Sky, on Friday, and so that's where my focus is.
Yeah, I want to go full on Pete Francis. Is there, before we go there, any story to leaving Dispatch or amicable, that whole thing? Sorry, you've probably been asked this a few times.
No, I think things are amicable. It's band, as you know, and many people know, the band dynamic, the relationships in band is a very, very intense one. I think it involves so many different emotions that I guess it's a marriage of sorts, but they're very complex, because you have the creation of songs, the performing, who's doing what, then money begins to enter the relationship and how does that get worked out. But maybe I'll just comment on the show we played in Boston to 110,000 people. No one really saw that coming. It could have been 5,000 or 6,000 people. But on a beautiful sunny day on July 31st, 2004, we played the Hat Shell in Boston. And the entire highway was closed. And it was a free show. And that, to this day, I know I could say we played Madison Square Garden, the TD Garden, Red Bull Arena, Red Rocks. But there was something about that show that it was our own little Woodstock. It was a free show. And it just, to me, had the power of being part of a band that you love, and maybe that our fans, maybe they felt the love that we had given all these years, because I think we were a band that every gig we would always talk to everyone. So it wasn't sort of a band that maybe with a record label and there's can be a division in a way between the band and the people or business, and I think that was a really special part of our band, was being integrated quite closely with the fans.
Oh, so I didn't realize you were such a DIY band, even on that massive level. That's a beautiful thing.
It was beautiful, man. We never signed a major label deal. We were never really on TV, never much of a radio band. So yeah, it was this sort of do it yourself, as you mentioned, thing. And yeah, we put years and years of work into it.
So now you're doing your solo records under your name, Pete Francis. You're basically straddling two worlds now. It's kind of exciting for you that you have all this freedom now. You're in the new music era. You can do whatever you want, play whatever you want, play small rooms, medium-sized rooms. I'm sure that's got to be a great feeling, but that's got to be strange to be coming from that type of like pretty big infrastructure to now you're kind of doing it, probably fairly DIY, I'm assuming. How do you feel about that? Are you pumped? What are your goals with music now?
Yeah, I feel good about it. I mean, I should let you know that I now have a management team, a booking agent, and a publicist behind this record, Pattern Sky, and having a new team. And my wife, Katie, is quite involved. So when you're part of a band, the decision making can get be slow, and you're asking this, can we do this? So I like the way things are operating now. I think it's more streamlined for me. And yes, but to your point, I'll play breweries, play a club, I'll play even a people's private party. But I feel very focused, and this record is it was cool. I recorded most of the record myself, and I have a studio in my house. Then I worked with a very talented producer, engineer, mixer named Scott Jacoby. Scott won a Grammy for mixing a Vampire Weekend record, and has just done thousands of records, and is just really helped me bring this record to a place that I feel super psyched about.
Yeah. So obviously you love writing, you love creating art. And what about the touring side of things? Do you still like really enjoy being out there and like talking to people in clubs, breweries? Is the hang something that still gets you excited?
I love the hang. I think it's great. I feel kind of the most comfortable I've ever felt on stage. All these years of performing, I found it hard to be like myself. I'm performing, but now I feel like on stage I can really be who I am as a person. And I think that's really taken years and years of doing this. So to answer your question, I love the interaction. And I also like playing smart gigs, meaning it's a gig that people know about. They're going to come. You know, I have done touring where you're opening up for a big act, and maybe I don't feel as connected with the people. And my management team are trying, a booking agent are trying to do very purposeful gigs.
Sure. And now that you mentioned that, like maybe some tours with some shows where you're like, what is this? You know, why are we in this town? Is there like a particular soul crushing show that you look back on fondly that you're like, that was pretty funny? Or even off stage, like it's a thing I like to ask on the pod, like a soul crushing moment on the road, maybe meet a weirdo who blackmails you, or you know, whatever, it doesn't matter.
There are situations where something can be built up like so exciting. So in 2003 I signed a Pete Francis record label with Hollywood Records, and I was really excited about this record, Untold. You know, I thought it was great, and I was told by my management at the time that I'd be doing 10 dates opening for Peter Gabriel, who was a hero of mine. So my whole team, my in the van and trailer, drove from Connecticut to California. I was all set, and I was all set up on the stage. And then I had found out that the whole tour was canceled.
Ooh.
And I don't know, there was some, you know, that's where you deal with management or other people that you don't feel like you can trust, you know? And so there are situations like that and others where you really get burned. And those are times, that you want to give up. But I kept going, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is, on a broader note on this topic, it is astonishing the amount of times people tell you they're going to do something directly to your face and then not do it. And they might be super well intentioned, you know what I mean? It might be in the moment, yeah, let's fucking do it, we're going to make this happen. And this happens almost on the daily in life, just, you know, even outside of music. But I think it's just so huge if you say you're going to do something and you do it, you're ahead of 99% of the world. You know, it's kind of insane how that is, but especially in music, like 9 out of 10 people ain't going to come through, you know?
I think you bring a great point. And that's why I feel like working with management or my current team, that we can talk about this, you know, trust each other. I think what you just said about following through, doing what you're going to say you're going to do, it's a big one, because this business, a lot of like weasel-like behavior happens. And I guess I just try to be honest and true, and I want to fulfill to the best of my ability.
Good man, Pete Francis. What are you into? Or while we're on that, any particular moments of like music industry, you know, take it in the ass from the industry while we're on it? Sometimes that can be funny in retrospect.
Yeah, you know, like there was this one time where it was like Napster was coming up, and I don't know how the record companies were dealing with it, but one A&R dude came to a show like with a big block of an MP3 player, like right on his chest.
Like a bowling ball size?
Yes. Nice. Just a lot of that was, I don't, you know, kind of this strange courting that some of these companies do, and then you feel like it's baloney.
Yeah, that must have been weird, man. I mean, I missed that era. I wish I would have seen it, but basically the record labels as money laundering schemes You know, so many of them were, going back to the 60s and 70s even. And it was this time where, you know, it just seemed like there was just money to be thrown around, which seems so foreign to me. But it must have been annoying and fun and exciting and just bizarre all at the same time.
I think it was, even though Dispatch didn't sign a label, we certainly talked to labels. We, we worked with some bigger booking agents, and what I guess I would say about that is that you really have to trust the entity that you're a part of. And if it's not even a band, you believe in yourself. And I think that if you have a sort of love for what you're doing, that in itself is a bit of protection from a lot of the absurdity that you're going to come across. So trying not to be too vulnerable to some of these people that will, because this business will constantly disappoint you if you let it, you know what I'm saying? But if you feel that you feel intact with your work, you feel intact with some people that work with you, your family or this, then I think you can have more staying power, and allow little wins to mean more than a label deal. The big tour will all open up for that person. The big article in Rolling Stone. So that's I guess those are my thoughts about coming up in this business.
No, that's so true, man. I mean, I even notice it like on just a concrete level, like shows where we're having a blast on stage, where the fun is just clearly radiating. Like I can visually see it on the spreadsheet at the end of the night. Like we sell more merch. We sell way more merch than a show that we might play well, but you can tell we're like really burnt maybe, or maybe I'm not. I mean, I'm always giving it as hard as I can, but maybe it's a show where I'm clearly not having a shitload of fun, or my voice is struggling or something. So that's a real thing, man. Like and it's advice I get all the time is like, yeah, make records that you're really into. Don't write them for anyone else, because that's what's going to radiate off the stage,
Yeah, and also reach out to people, reach out to other bands, reach out and say, hey, I admire what you guys are doing. Would you be interested in doing this? I think the focus doesn't always have to be on yourself. I think that it's smart to reach out. Hey, would you be willing to do this? Or just flat out, man, totally dig your thing. We'd be willing to open up for you if that would be cool. Because I think this business and a lot of parts of life are about connections or real connections.
Yeah, big time.
I think that I felt like Dispatch in a way did a good job of creating a strong magnet of energy, and that people were coming to us. And I know that's not always the case, but that's a nice thing. And then when people come, it's a huge thank you from the band coming off the stage. Hey, would you like us to do something? I just feel like that's more of a formula for growth, to be like, what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? What can we get? There's the momentum of radiating good energy. There's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, and I think we're moving into like an era of collaboration where it's becoming more of a common thing, more of a popular thing, especially in rock music, for bands. It's always been a thing in hip hop, I feel like, but for bands to kind of cross-pollinate more, guest on each other's tracks. I don't know how much you've done of that in the past, but I've really gotten into it big time the last couple of years. And it's fun. It gives you both sides a new angle and a new spark. And it's not hard to do, I mean, you don't have to co-write every song with somebody else to collaborate with them. Just, I mean, during the Pando, I had all these finished songs, and I like started reaching out to a lot of my heroes, musical heroes from the 90s, and I was shocked at how many of them were like willing to guest vocal on a track. They have a home studio, I have a home studio, so boom.
How cool
It's
is
pretty
that?
easy.
Yeah, how cool is that? Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've been writing with a few people that I met recently, and that spark to me is what so much of music is about. That really joyful, that collaboration where like, dude, that song, those lyrics didn't exist 10 minutes ago, and now we're working on this, and look what, I mean, that to me is what it's all about.
Yeah, it's huge. What do you, now that you have kind of this kind of new freedom with music, Pete, where are there any places outside of the US you want to tour? Maybe if it's just for adventure touring, like maybe you want to go to frickin' New Zealand or something. Like, what's on the bucket list?
Man, there are definitely some European countries, but we Dispatch were really lucky. We got to tour. I think Germany was our best. We had our best dates there. Austria, playing maybe 1,000-seat rooms, 800-seat rooms. My mom is Swedish, so I have cousins in Sweden. I'd love to play in Stockholm someday. Nice. Dispatch didn't get a chance to play in Spain, Italy, or Portugal. That would be a dream. I've never been to South America, so that would be amazing. We did get to play Australia, which was super cool. And yeah, so I love playing gigs. I love exploring cities. That's really was when we had a tour bus, was one of my favorite things. It's like you play a gig in Denver and you wake up in San Fran, and I just go wander around the city all day.
Oh man, dude, so, you lucky bastard. I can't imagine just rocking a tour bus for years. That is too sweet.
We were very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean, I always say, like, if I could just play a gig, maybe sell merch for 30 minutes and then walk on a tour bus and not have to worry about anything else, I could tour 365 days a year till I'm blue in the face. Like, that sounds pretty good. And like, I mean, I love what we do, but it's, you know how it is. It's fucking goddamn heavy lift, because you're we're loading in, we're setting up merch, we're making price menus, we're doing the gig, we're hanging for an hour after, we're loading gear. I'm the Tetris guy. I Tetris the van, and shove everything in the back of that milk truck up to the ceiling while, people are like hanging out at the van. I'm like selling merch and Tetrising gear into the van. And then we drive to a relatively shitty hotel. You know what I mean? It's like, there's not a lot of breathing time.
No.
And I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I just, the thought of you just waking up in San Francisco and walking around and not having to worry, I envy that greatly.
That was, there weren't that many tours, but there were tours where that was. And I agree, because I've Tetris vans and still Tetris my Suburban. And it's cool. I guess I could just say, wow, that time was amazing. I'm married now with a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, so I'm not doing that kind of crazy touring, but who knows, one day maybe.
Yeah, and I just think, I mean, I just don't expect a lot. I don't expect a lot from music. I don't expect a lot from people, and that's not to be like pessimistic. Like, people are generally great. People are good on an individual level. But I just think keeping expectations like pretty low is like really helped me in the long run. I know maybe that sounds pathetic or like pessimistic, and it's not meant to. But I just expect things to be hard, and then I'm just not, my doors aren't blown off when they are.
I hear you, man. I think it's a noble quest to be a musician. And like I said, we were talking earlier, the little wins, holding your favorite guitar, playing some gigs, those tend to be some of tend to be some awesome moments. But yeah, I don't, and there's some ways that it was a magic carpet ride for Dispatch. But also, like, as I mentioned, it was also quite difficult.
When did you recently just have what was your most recent, like, really present moment? It could be musical or just being alive.
Yeah, on Thursday night, I had a lot of friends and neighbors over to our living room, and I did an Instagram live for a lot of these people. And it was for the release of Pattern Sky. And I just have to say, that was a beautiful moment. I felt present. These were people that know me. And I still think that is a really beautiful exchange of music and friends and neighbors. And I just think that's where it's at. I do feel in our culture, America, in our world, there's not enough of it. So when you have friends and neighbors come into your living room and you're sharing music, I felt like I could see I was very present and just felt, I don't know how you've been, but even in my life, gratitude to be grateful that my hands are working, that I can sing. I think there's a tendency for us as human beings to always want more, want it to be better. But they're in a tiny little, 30 or 40 people in our living room. It was just a beautiful experience.
Man, it is. And it is hard to get people all hanging out in a living room these days. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't sound hard. It doesn't seem like it should be, but like having those great hangs with just that camaraderie of no phones, having dinner together. Like, man, I can't believe how busy people are and how like impossible it is to rally 6 to 8 people over for dinner.
It's hard, man. I feel like it was easier to get people together sometimes before the iPhone.
Of course it was.
Like, come over and nobody's like, my brain is buzzing around a million places. And then you're like, oh, we'll just meet on the backyard, or we'll go to that one spot we know in town where there's music. So yeah, I hear you on that.
Yeah. What's getting you excited? Like, outside of music, anything getting you pumped up?
Well, I love my kids. My daughter Calliope is 10. My son Charlie is 12. And I knew like very little bit about pro basketball until he mentioned some. I just don't know. I didn't know anything. And he told me about that guy, Steph Curry, in the Golden State Warriors. And then he showed me clips of him shooting all of these 3-points. And I was kind of floored. So I think seeing the world through his eyes, being a 12-year-old, and that's pretty beautiful. So that I think gives me and my wife a lot of joy.
Yeah, how cool having little buddies, especially as you get older too. Like, imagine, like, that's what, I don't have kids, but that's one thing, like, I want to be like 60, 70, 80 and just have like some little buddies that are like my best friends, still around. I don't know.
Yeah, so. I totally agree. You see the world in a different way.
How old were you when you had your first kiddo?
Let's see. I was 30, 35 or 6, I think.
Okay. What was that a big, like, were you freaked out, worried that you weren't going to be able to do music as much, or how did you take that?
I thought it was hard. I mean, having children, those babies, like, I didn't have younger siblings growing up. I was the youngest, and I had 3 older siblings. So I didn't know much about babies. And so I got my ass like handed to me, It's hard. I have to say, I kind of dig this time better with the 10 and 12, because the little guys, they want the mamas a little bit more. But, right now with 10 and 12, I love throwing the ball with them, or my daughter doing, to me, it's a new perspective on life and being like, whoa, this is cool.
What was the point where you're like, whoa, shit, I cannot handle this? Like when you got a little kiddo shitting his pants?
I don't know how you are, where some men are, but the babies thing I found to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like babies and holding babies and like waking up in the middle of the night and all that. And they're like sick a lot, I don't know. I thought that was hard, but I think it's better now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, props to you, man. That's I like huge ups to anyone with kiddos still doing music full time. That just rules. That's a tall feat,
Yeah, but they've become a part of it. They come to shows, they'll come on stage. I think it gets them going a little bit with like public speaking, and they introduced me at my living room show the other night. And my son put on a little blazer and he's cracking some jokes. And so it's kind of cool to have a little family band too,
Hell yeah. Are you in the middle of are you doing like a full living room tour as we speak?
I'm not, but I do them from time to time. Yeah. I'll go and play. I'm at a point now where like, I just love playing, thinking about the performance. I don't know how you are with it, but sometimes even if there are not a lot of people at a show and I'm still saying, how can I sing this song better? Like, what can I do? What should my solo be like? That, I like that. I like that feeling, because then I feel that inside of me, there's something that's going on, as opposed to needing exterior, recognition or to make the performance better. Like I love playing, you probably love playing. So there's sometimes where you're like, my energy's there. And so it's still fulfilling.
Do you tour with like a tour manager when you're doing the house gigs, to kind of help with all the logistics?
Sometimes I'll bring, a couple guys, and sometimes I'll have a musician sort of help me after, packing up my gear a bit so I can go to the merch table and talk with people. My wife will come. So yeah, and I still try to live by that thing that I'm sure you do, and a lot of musicians, of just hitting that last note and then going to the merch table or shaking hands, because that is that's a major part of our experience.
It's huge, man. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times my brain is so cooked after a performance. Like I'll get to the merch table and I'll be pumped. I'll be pumped about it. But like people will be talking to me, and sometimes like I'll like wake up mid sentence and realize someone's telling me something, because my brain is just so cooked. Like I have nothing left. But I have found like if there's a moment, I'll go try to like hide under the stage or stand outside even for like 60 seconds and just like breathe a bunch. And then it's huge. And then you go to the merch table and you actually have a chance, you're pretty revived even with that minute breather.
I totally agree.
Any dates you want to plug at all, Pete Francis?
Well, I'm really excited. I'm playing the Greenwich Town Party in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is really a cool town party. They do get some big names, and this year it's a New Orleans theme. So you've got like Preservation Hall, Trombone Shorty, nice. Maeve Staples, Revivalists, Eric Krasno, and I'm playing the town stage. So I couldn't be more thrilled about that. And, I love that kind of music. So that is on May 27th. And then June 10th is a cool pavilion in Westport, Connecticut, that I'd love folks to come out to.
Brilliant, dude. Well, hey, you're an awesome dude, man. I really appreciate you coming on and riffing. And we'll keep it going. I'll give you a shout if ever I never get to Connecticut, but if I do, you'll be the first dude I reach out to.
Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks, Pete. Much love, dude.